made her an interesting character. Gwen didn't have an edge. She was just a nice person. I don't think she had a mean bone in her body, and wasn't likely to do something that was likely to screw things up for Peter, out of some misguided sense of self-aggrandizement, which Mary Jane was quite capable of doing, which makes her a much more interesting character. In 1987, the character was married to Spiderman in The Amazing Spider-Man Annual Number 21. As a consequence, writer J. M. DeMatteis made Mary Jane and her marriage to Spider-Man one of the central themes of the critically acclaimed Craven's Last Hunt, published the same year as The Wedding. DeMatteis commented that Craven's Last Hunt has a lot of darkness in it, but the story primarily is about Peter and his journey into the light and the power of simple human love. The reason Peter makes it out is because he has Mary Jane in his life, and that is his salvation. Mary Jane M.J. Watson is a character appearing in American comic books published by Marvel Comics. The character was created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, making her first appearance in The Amazing Spider-Man number 25, June 1965, and subsequently designed by John Romita Sr. in number 42, November 1966. Since then, she has gone on to become Spider-Man's main love interest and later his wife. Mary Jane is his most famous and prominent love interest due to their long history, and one of the most iconic in all of comics. Although she made a brief first appearance in The Amazing Spider-Man number 25 with a plant obscuring her face, as part of a then long-running recurring gag about Aunt May attempting to set Peter up with her friend's nice girl niece, Mary Jane's first official face reveal was a cameo appearance in The Amazing Spider-Man number 42. Designed and drawn by John Romita Sr., her entrance is regarded as one of the most iconic introductions in comic history, owing it to its build-up, her hyper-vibrant red hair and beauty, and her introductory line, "Face it, Tiger. You just hit the jackpot." Since then, Tiger has been her most recognizable nickname for Peter, spanning comics and media adaptations, with the character becoming the third to assume the superhero mantle of Jackpot in August 2023. Throughout her initial appearances, Mary Jane was written as a foil to Peter's initially intended soulmate, Gwen Stacy, with her extroverted, fun-loving personality, a mask for her troubled home life, contrasting with Gwen being more like Peter in demeanor and intellect. Nonetheless, following Gwen's death in the night Gwen Stacy died story arc, the heartbroken Mary Jane became more caring and empathetic, and eventually one of the few people to consistently know Peter's secret identity. This would result in the two falling deeply in love and eventually getting married. Despite their marriage being undone in the widely panned storyline One More Day due to the timeline manipulations by according to co-creator Stan Lee, he and Romita had intended for Gwen Stacy to be Spider-Man's one true love, and introduced Mary Jane just for fun, but that somehow, Mary Jane seemed to have all the personality, and much as we tried to make Gwen more attractive, we couldn't. We, ourselves, felt that Mary Jane ended up being not only more beautiful but more fun and more interesting, and we finally decided to let Peter end up with her, but it was as though the characters had taken over. Mary Jane Watson's unexpected popularity with readers after her debut changed the course of the plan for Gwen Stacy's character, who was intended to be the true love for Peter and was characterized as a sweet daddy's girl in contrast to Mary Jane's 60s counterculture, vampy and liberated personality. Fans surprisingly liked Mary Jane more and demanded for her to replace Gwen's role as Peter Parker's main love interest, as readers found Mary Jane more exciting, and that no matter how by the villain Mephisto, Mary Jane and Peter retained a close friendship and have had on and off relations since. Unbeknownst to them, they are further destined to have a daughter who will end Mephisto's eventual reign over the Earth, and whom Mephisto seeks to erase from reality. Since her debut, Mary Jane Watson has been described as one of Marvel's most notable non-powered female characters. 1. In film, Kirsten Dunst portrayed the character in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, while Shailene Woodley had an uncredited silent cameo appearance as the character in the 2014 film The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Zoe Kravitz voiced Mary Jane in the 2018 animated film Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse, with Nicole Delaney and Melissa Stern voicing other versions of the character in its 2023 sequel Spider-Man, Across the Spider-Verse. The erasing of Peter and Mary Jane's marriage was initially a adopted in the newspaper strip as well, but due to negative reader reaction Lee later revealed it to be a bad dream. Mary Jane remains Spider-Man's wife in the newspaper strip continuity. Although the marriage stayed erased, Mary Jane and Peter Parker became a couple again during Nick Spencer's run in Amazing Spider-Man. She got a spin-off comic later, The Amazing Mary Jane, by Leah Williams, Carlos Gomez, and Carlos Lopez. Mary Jane is depicted as an extremely beautiful, green-eyed redhead and was the primary romantic interest of Peter Parker for the majority of the 40 years between her first full appearance in 1966 and the One More Day story in 2007. Peter and Mary Jane married in 1987. Initially, she competed with others for Peter's affection, most prominently with Gwen Stacy and the Black Cat. Mary Jane's relatively unknown early life was eventually explored in The Amazing Spider-Man number 259. Chooses to date Gwen. Mary Jane, who becomes Harry Osborn's former love interest and former girlfriend for about a year, remains a close friend to Peter and Gwen. Despite her enjoyment of life, her friendships, and dating, Mary Jane refuses to be tied down for too long. When her relationship with Harry Osborn comes to an end, it has significant impact on Harry, driving him to a drug overdose. 17. This in turn creates a boomerang effect, driving his father Norman Osborn to the brink of insanity, temporarily restoring his memories as the Green Goblin after the Green Goblin murders Gwen in The Amazing Spider-Man number 121. Mary Jane attempts to comfort Peter. Peter, who is distraught over the loss of Gwen Stacy, angrily confronts MJ about her seemingly flighty and carefree attitude. He questions her ability to ever care about people like him and Gwen, and states you wouldn't be sorry if your own mother died, unaware that her mother had actually died. Mary Jane is hurt by Peter's comments. Early issues of The Amazing Spider-Man featured a running joke about Peter dodging his Aunt May's attempts to set him up with that nice Watson girl next door, whom Peter had not yet met and assumed would not be his type, since his aunt liked her. In the Parallel Lives graphic novel, an identical scenario is shown between Mary Jane and her Aunt Anna. Mary Jane made her first actual appearance in The Amazing Spider-Man number 25, June 1965, although her face was obscured. However, she was seen by both Liz Allen and Betty Brant, who were both shocked by how attractive she is. It is not until The Amazing Spider-Man number 42, November 1966, that her face is actually seen. In that issue, on the last page, Peter finally meets her, and he is stunned by her beauty even as she speaks the now famous line, "Face it, Tiger. You just hit the jackpot." Peter begins to date her, much to the annoyance of Gwen Stacy. However, they eventually become irritated with each other and Peter subsequently chooses to die. Mary Jane Watson is mentioned in The Amazing Spider-Man number 15, August 1964, and is initially used as a running joke of the series, as Peter Parker's Aunt May repeatedly attempts to set her unwilling nephew up on a date with her. Parker, also known as Spider-Man, consistently worms his way out of meeting Mary Jane who, aside from a brief appearance in number 25, June 1965, with her face obscured, is never actually seen until The Amazing Spider-Man number 42, November 1966. 2. Peter David wrote in 2010 that artist John Romita Sr. made the definitive statement of his arrival by pulling Mary Jane out from behind the oversized potted plant that blocked the reader's view of her face in issue number 25, and placing her on panel in what would instantly become an iconic moment. 3. Romita has stated that in designing Mary Jane, he used Anne Margaret from the movie Bye Bye Birdie as a guide, using her coloring, the shape of her face, her red hair and her form-fitting short skirts. Marvel editor-in-chief Joe Quesada said that he feels the marriage ages the characters, making them less appealing to young readers, and lessens the dramatic, soap opera possibilities, but also stated that divorcing or widowing, or annulling the marriage, would only be worse. 12. He has also pointed out that the marriage itself was editorially mandated. Stan Lee decided to marry the characters in his daily newspaper strip and, even though the two were not even dating at the time in the comic book series, it was decided to marry them in the regular Marvel Universe as well. In 2007, Quesada presided over the controversial One More Day storyline, which he also drew, in which Peter and Mary Jane's marriage is erased from history and everyone's memories by the devil Mephisto. Quesada states he is an avid fan of the Peter and MJ relationship, and in several interviews has claimed that the alternate MC2 universe, in which Peter and Mary Jane are happily married, is a natural progress. She attempts to leave, but hesitates as she approaches the door, and ultimately chooses to stay with him. 19. This served as a turning point in their relationship, and over the next couple of years, she and Peter become very close friends. Eventually, upon realizing the feelings that they share for one another, they decide to take their relationship to the next level, having sex in the process. 20. Their relationship has a few initial hurdles, such as MJ's hot temper and Peter's always dashing off to be Spider-Man. Following the events of the original Clone Saga, Peter realizes that Mary Jane is the girl he has always loved, and the two begin dating again. Despite loving Peter, MJ does not wish to be tied down. Yet, she allows the relationship to progress and is left with a difficult decision when Peter proposes to her. After taking a short time to consider, she turns him down. Following a series of traumatic experiences involving Peter's absences and his costumed alter ego endangering his Aunt May, a spiritually exhausted MJ leaves New York for several months. Peter meanwhile dates other women, most notably Felicia Hardy. MJ returns, her behavior showing a marked change with her abandonment of her false front. Following an attack on Peter by Puma, she breaks down and admits her knowledge of Peter's secret identity in The Amazing Spider-Man number 257. After learning of her own family history in The Amazing Spider-Man number 259, Peter finds a new respect for her and begins to truly understand her. MJ makes it clear to Peter that knowing his identity changes nothing about her feelings, and that she only loves him as a friend, her best friend. Despite the one-shot graphic novel Amazing Spider-Man, Parallel Lives and Untold Tales of Spider-Man number 16 revealing that Mary Jane discovered Peter's secret when she noticed Spider-Man climbing out of Peter's bedroom window after his uncle's murder, many comics published before this revelation claim that she had simply figured. Despite the one-shot graphic novel Amazing Spider-Man, Parallel Lives and Untold Tales of Spider-Man number 16 revealing that Mary Jane discovered Peter's secret when she noticed Spider-Man climbing out of Peter's bedroom window after his uncle's murder, many comics published before this revelation claim that she had simply figured it out, with the details of how and when left ambiguous to the reader. Following Ned Leeds' murder at the hands of the Foreigner, a changed and bitter Peter returns to New York, where his lack of direction in life is not helped when Ned is framed as the Hobgoblin, and Felicia elects to leave Peter behind as she is tied to the Foreigner. Mary Jane returns to Peter, presumably to patch things up, but Peter surprises her with a second proposal of marriage, which MJ again turns down. 24. She returns to her family to settle debts with her father, with Peter following her. After aiding her sister in having her crooked father arrested, and aiding Peter against a spider slayer, Mary Jane has an epiphany on marriage, and agrees to become Peter's wife in spite of Peter and Mary Jane's mutual worry that they were marrying too early, Peter's concern for her safety, and her unwillingness to give up her party girl lifestyle. They marry. She adds Peter's surname to her own, making her Mary Jane Watson Parker. They were, at that moment, really in love. Spider-Man wears his black costume around this time, but after Mary Jane is frightened by a stalking Venom, she convinces him to change back to his old costume. Mary Jane continues to model after her marriage, but is stalked by her wealthy landlord, Jonathan Caesar. When she rejects his advances, he kidnaps her, but she manages to escape. While Caesar is briefly incarcerated, he uses his powerful business connections within the city and has her blacklisted as a model. She gets a role on the soap opera Secret Hospital, but is unhappy with her character's airheaded and mean personality.